The other day I was out walking through a field and I accidentally flushed a short-eared owl, and for me that was super exciting. I've spent a lot of time trying to photograph these guys and I've never had an opportunity to even see one in the wild. So it was really exciting, and as he was up in the sky, I raised my camera and all I had was kind of a lifeless, cloudy background. And that's just the way that it goes sometimes. We can't always pick and choose what our backgrounds look like. But I want to show you today how I was able to bring that cloudy, lifeless background to life a little bit. Now, before we dive into Lightroom, I do want to mention that it's extremely important whenever you're shooting that you don't blow the highlights. So you want to check your histogram and make sure that you are leaving a little space on the right as you're shooting so that you're able to recover some of these highlights. And another thing, you need to be shooting in RAW so you have as much image data to recover as possible. Okay, so let's dive right into Lightroom. Sometimes what people do is they'll try to bring back detail by just using the highlight slider or maybe taking down the exposure a little bit. But let me show you why that doesn't work here. So we have our background selected and we're just going to take down the highlights the whole way. And all that did was it just made it muddier, it just made it a little bit darker. That's not very impressive at all. I would much rather have some texture in there to show the cloud formations and make the image a bit more dynamic. Okay, so I've already taken my image into Topaz Photo AI and I've done a little bit of sharpening and denoise, and you can always do that right inside of Lightroom as well. But my workflow, I like to take it inside Topaz first. Now, I also have spent some time to get a nice clean mask for my background and a mask for my subject. So we're definitely going to be working with those here in just a moment. But the first thing I want to do before I do anything else in my editing, one thing that I really like to do is go into my color grading. And I like to go into the midtones. And in the midtones, a lot of times I'll boost up the luminance. This is a global adjustment and it affects the entire image, but I like how it just brightens up the midtones of the image, which really shouldn't affect the really bright highlights of the background very much. It's mostly just going to affect the subject. So with our midtones now raised, we're going to go into our mask and we're going to select our background mask. And I'm going to take the overlay off so we won't see that anymore. It won't be in the way. And we're going to slide down here in our background mask and we're going to bump up dehaze, and we're going to raise it by a significant amount. So I raised it to 90 there, and you can see what it did. It found any kind of shadows that were in the image, and it made them blue, which looks absolutely terrible, but it lets us know where those shadows are at, and we're going to begin to make some adjustments from here on out. I can see too that it looks a little bit pixelated, especially like if we zoom in here, definitely down here, it just looks rough. So the next thing that we're going to do, we're going to take our texture all the way down. So it's going to smooth all of that out. Makes a huge difference right away. So obviously, again, that color is not very good at all. So staying inside this mask, we're going to begin to adjust our color. So we're going to desaturate. We're going to take this way down here, kind of letting my computer catch up to me. And we're at about -75. And I think that looks really good. So let's take a look at what it looked like prior to this edit. And here we are now. So that just gave us so much detail back into the image. I think that's giving it a lot of character. So the next thing we're going to do is adjust our color. So right in here where the saturation is at, we can actually select a color that we would like to use, and we can try to make it kind of match. If we had a wide-ranging scene here, maybe a landscape, and there was a spot of washed out sky that we were trying to use this effect to enhance, this would be really beneficial in that case. In our case here, our subject is very small, and it's not like a wide-ranging area. So we just want to try to make a sky that looks logical. So if I would go down here, for instance, I mean, that's going to end up looking pretty ridiculous. So you can definitely see the difference that selecting the right color can make. And I don't want it to be too blue because it definitely wasn't a blue sky. So I think I might just kind of go with that and maybe even take the saturation down just a little bit more. So that's looking pretty decent. So I think at this point, we're going to come back up here to like kind of the typical adjustments that we might make. And I might try to bring the whites up a little bit more. And I think I'm going to take the shadows down a tad, and that's going to start to make that a little bit darker. Now, something else that we could do, we could add another mask here. We're maybe do a linear gradient, and we're going to just darken up the sky a tad. So we're going to do the burn, and I'm probably not going to keep it as much as the default does, and then we're going to take the shadows down a bit. So it's just giving it a little bit of a darker look there. And I might add one here to the bottom as well. So again, linear gradient, and I'm going to raise this up here and maybe stretch this out just a tad to make it kind of a wider range. And we're going to add the burn effect. Take that down a tad, and again, lower the shadows. Now on both of these, what I'm going to do is open up the mask, and I'm going to subtract my subject. So I've already masked my subject, so now that linear gradient, it was just barely hitting down here. It was hitting his feather, you can see right there, just a little bit. So we're going to subtract the subject from that mask. There we go. So that's beginning to look pretty good. Now I do want to add a little bit more light to my subject here, and I want to give him some light like on this side here. So what I'm going to do with my subject selected, intersect the mask with a radial gradient. So we're going to give him a little bit of light coming here from the bottom. So I'm just going to shape this radial gradient, going to move it around there. We're going to make that feather a little bit smaller. It's pretty good. And we're going to bring it up here and make it just a tad smaller. I want to kind of hit his face there. So with that mask, we're intersecting, and it's not going to affect anything around it. It's just going to affect, you can see here if I turn this on, it's just affecting the owl. So we raise the shadows up there, and it's just giving him just a little bit more light. So let's get rid of that overlay, and we'll really be able to see whenever we hit the backslash key. So he really brightened him up and gave him some detail. Now the final thing that I'm going to do in this image, so we brought back our colors in our sky, and I did make it a little bit exaggerated here just for the purpose of this demonstration so you could really see what we're doing. And what we're going to do here is just boost up his eyes a little bit. I just absolutely love the eyes on a short-eared owl. So we're going to do Iris Enhance, and we're just going to paint this on right over his eyes, both of them. And that's just going to brighten them up a little bit and make them stand out just a little bit more. So we were able to bring back that washed out sky with just a few mouse clicks. But again, the key is making sure that you don't blow those highlights whenever you're shooting in the field, and that you're shooting in RAW so that you have enough data to bring back whenever you start to edit. I hope that this video helps you out if you ever find yourself in this situation, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.